some people like to believe that they know God's will is to always keep us healing, to keep our bodies full and fit.
Right.
And I've just been contemplating and thinking about that a lot because the people I'm around talk about that.
Sorry to hear that.
It's okay. And I'm just wondering your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
What do you think about it?
Isn't it too bad that Jesus didn't have enough faith? Because, man, that dude suffered one of the most painful deaths possible. He obviously didn't have enough faith. That's why he suffered the way he did. That's why he was rejected the way he was. That's why he didn't have enough money to buy off Pontius Pilate and escape the cross. If you're going to follow a human being, a person who claims to be God in human form, and he goes through the rejection and the suffering that Christ went through, and then you're going to turn around and say, well, if I have enough faith, I'm not going to be poor and I'm not going to have health problems. I don't know what you're smoking, man, but you're so out of touch with reality, it's scary. I'll tell you what that is. That's a human-based, selfish gospel. That's what that is. That's what the health, wealth gospel is. If you have enough faith, you won't get sick and you will not get poor. Ah, baloney. The vast majority of followers of Christ who live in Africa, South America, and Asia fall far below the level of income that we have in the West. And that doesn't mean that they have lack of faith. It means they're born into an unfair, messed up world. Stuart, what do you think?
Teachers will be judged more harshly. Out of James, right? That's a pretty intense verse that you need to take seriously. And so a pastor who raises money, $54 million for a jet, I think is in a lot of danger. Because what you're doing is you're preying off of oftentimes a lot of the poor. And what you're doing is you are taking money from people and promising blessings, and you don't have that kind of power to promise a blessing over somebody's life. If I tell you right here and now, you guys listen to our message, and life is going to go great for you. Not only just positive psychology for you, but we're going to bless you. And if you have a demon, we'll hit you on the little forehead and make you fall down, and then maybe you'll back to life, and you'll be fully blessed in every kind of way. Okay, we don't have that power. And every single person who claims to have that power, I am tremendously skeptical of, and I hope you are as well. So we see this preying on the poor, preying on those who are suffering all the time in order to fill their pockets.
They say, like, it is God's will heal, God's will to, like, for you to prosper and such. And to extent, they're not wrong.
Yeah.
But like you said, they abuse it.
Sure. Everybody wants this place to look more like heaven will be. And we are supposed to. See, everybody thinks heaven is just totally different dimension, which is true, but it's a totally different dimension in the sense of we are going to be somehow picked up by the angels and transported to this other realm. No, that's not the case at all. This isn't Dune or something like that. What's going to happen is the earth will be redeemed and created anew right here, and we will have relationships. So yes, blessings, making each other grow in character, all of that is important and good. And you don't want to be somebody like the pillar saints who would sit on top of poles sticking up their butts for days at a time in order to deny themselves and definitely not accept any type of blessing in order to somehow get closer to God. So no, prosperity gospel and self-flagellation to get closer to God, neither of those are true. Jesus Christ did come to heal. All of his miracles were for a purpose. See, that's the difference between Christ's miracles and, say, Egyptian miracles back then. Egyptian miracles and other civilizations who were claiming miracles, they were magic tricks typically. Jesus' miracles were to bless, to heal, to change people. And they weren't supernatural. People always say, oh, miracles are so supernatural. No, they're restoring nature to what it's supposed to be. So they're very natural. So see, that's the whole deal over, it's not about self-flagellation. I'm going to deny myself. I'm going to live out a type of my calling to be poor in every way and just give everything away. And I have a family and they're going to starve to death or live a horrible type of life. No, I don't think Christ calls you to that. And I definitely don't think he calls you to a type of prosperity gospel. So understanding, yes, we will have blessings. We follow Christ, but you will suffer greatly as well. Christ suffered. Paul suffered. Job suffered, David suffered. The list goes on and on. And just about all the eyewitnesses eventually went to their death through martyrdom in some pretty painful kinds of ways. So understanding the balance, we can grow through suffering. There is prosperity oftentimes, but for the majority of people, real prosperity is not going to come until heaven comes to earth.
Why would, in your worldview, God basically, it almost seems like set or give people different opportunities to get to heaven or hell?
Yeah.
And how that coincide with free will when it seems like in general so many people tend to just follow the religion into which they were born?
So just because my parents told me that Jesus is the truth doesn't mean that he's not the truth, right? So becoming an adult means you have to think for yourself. And the majority of my atheist friends grew up in Christian homes, okay? So just because you grew up in a home that taught something doesn't mean you have to follow it. You have a free will, you're responsible. Is God going to judge me differently from a guy who was born in Papua New Guinea and never heard about Christ? You bet. God is going to judge us according to what we had as opportunities. God is not going to judge us based on our ignorance. So because God is all-knowing, he's in a position to judge each one of us uniquely, fairly, and justly.
Say someone follows a different religion that they were taught and that they believe to be true.
Yeah.
You think God will judge them in a way like I'm not, if they were exposed to Christianity, you would say they would go to hell. But what if they believe just as much as you that their religion is true?
Good.
Or what if an atheist believes that
You bet.
they're right?
This pink elephant, you know, the one right here? This pink elephant gives my life meaning, purpose, and direction. This pink elephant is awesome.
I'd say your pink elephant was the same thing as you saying that God exists. So
Good.
how come you get to decide that your God is the correct God?
Okay, I don't decide that my God is the correct God. The question is the evidence supporting the pink elephant is right here?
No.
Thank you. No. Does the evidence support some type of a God existing?
No.
No?
Say no one can actually know if God. I'm agnostic because I don't believe anyone could actually know that God exists.
I think it's impossible to live an agnostic life because you have to make ethical decisions every day, and the ethical decisions you make tattle what you really believe. You have to make a decision every day. Are people valuable or are they trash? The decision you make shows what you really believe about reality. You have to make a decision every day. That guy in that casket or in that urn, is there life after death or not? You have no decision, you have no option. You have to decide. So you see, sir, the decisions that you make tattle what you really believe. So please don't tell me you're agnostic.
I like not that doesn't show that I'm saying that I believe that no one can believe that no one can truly know if their God is correct or not. Like I don't believe that you can truly be 100% sure.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure that I'm not a bad dream you're having right now.
Yeah. that would
Okay?
be correct.
All right, so we agree on that.
Yes.
I can't prove anything 100%.
Correct.
But guess what? As a thinking human being, I don't base my life on proof. I base my life on evidence. The evidence is that his face starts right there. That's why my fist stops here. Not because I can prove to you 100% that he's right here. Maybe my eyesight's lying to me.
But they're like, yeah, that's true. But we tend to just go off the presupposition that we senses like work. But
No, I don't go off a presupposition that my senses work. I experience this.
that's a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Well, I'm not presupposing that my senses tell me the truth. I'm experiencing this. And I know very well that if I smack him, there's going to be contact. Why? Because the evidence of my experience tells me that's true. Because I've been hit and didn't feel good. So the evidence is that, yes, my senses perceive reality. That's why I trust my senses.
Well, but that's a circular position. So you trust your senses in a
Because
circular
my
way.
experience, my senses, putting me in touch with reality. That's why I trust my senses.
So you have no presuppositions, like.
Yes, I have presuppositions, but I can promise you, as a thinking person, I'm going to question those presuppositions, and I'm going to ask why. Why have I embraced those presuppositions? And the reason that I have embraced the presupposition that my senses perceive reality is because I experience contact, touch, and I talk with him and we find out yes. Now, why do you trust your reason?
Reason is a presupposition. Like, there is nothing to base it off of, but we act as if it exists. Same thing with your senses. When you're saying that you touch him and you believe that you're touching him, in general, science would say that you could theoretically put your hand and one in like hundreds of billions of times it would go through him. That's the thing that's said in such. Do you disagree with that?
I sure do.
So you disagree? So you disagree with science?
Yeah, walk through the tree. Please,
Well,
go right ahead. Walk through the
It's
tree.
unlikely because the particles are moving, but in
Yeah,
general,
the particles are moving, and your particles are moving. So why can't
Correct.
you walk through the tree?
Well, theoretically, you can.
Theoretically. Baloney. I can't base my life on theoretical.
Crazy doesn't mean that in science it can't theoretically happen. I know it sounds crazy, but
Thank you. It sure does sound
in
crazy.
science that does happen.
Oh, no, it does not happen. I have never watched a man or a woman walk through a tree.
I've never watched someone be resurrected.
Good. But guess what? You do know that existence is real, that life is real. And so now you've got to ask yourself the question, is it more reasonable to believe that life comes from non-life, that existence is produced by non-existence, or is it more reasonable to believe that life comes from life and that existence comes from a creator? What's more plausible? Not what you can prove. I know you can't prove anything, neither can I. But what is more plausible? What is more reasonable in light of the evidence? That's what you got to ask. And don't give me this garbage that, oh no, science has to prove something in order for me to believe it. Science has nothing to say about love. It has nothing to say about meaning in life. It has nothing to say about life after death. Nothing. Because science deals with what you can observe, what you can quantify. And you can't observe and quantify love, meaning, and whether there's life after death or not. It's far more reasonable to believe that morals come not from matter, but that morals come from a personal being who defines what's right and wrong. It's far more reasonable to believe that life comes from life. It is not reasonable for any of you guys to believe life comes from non-life. Oh, that's a miracle, guys. The only problem is you guys don't have a miracle worker. There's no God for you.
Hold on.
No, don't hold on. Think accurately. Life does not come from non-life. Never. Can you show me life coming from non-life? And yet you guys believe in a miracle.
No.
Life comes from non-life at the
We
inception.
believe in low probability things.
Oh,
sometimes
baloney.
happen.
Low probability did not make him.
Yes, it did.
No, it did
You're
not.
actually- that's 100% what happened.
No. He has a mom and a
Literally all
dad.
genetics.
He has a
Yeah,
mom and a
all of
dad.
genetics
He
says
doesn't
that.
have low probability made you, buddy.
What
Aren't
are
you
you
lucky,
talking-
sucker?
This is like the craziest argument ever.
I think you are a little bit
Genetics-
crazy. I
genetics-
think you are.
Think about this. Genetics.
Genetics?
Yeah. What is the probability of his exact genetic code happening? 100%?
Sir, you're making a classic mistake of the observation of different sperm and different eggs. Gosh, what's the probability? That doesn't create anything. That's a statistical fact, okay? But that doesn't create him. What creates him is a mom and a dad, two living beings creating him. You don't get life from a statistic. And by the way, you don't win the lottery because of a statistic. You win the lottery by buying a ticket. And that's my whole point. Science is a wonderful description of reality. But I can promise you, science doesn't create. Science describes creation. It describes life. Bravo. But you can't say science made this guy. No, science didn't make him.
So God made humans, right?
Yeah, God made humans.
Why did he give them leukemia, though?
He didn't. Human beings rebelled against God. We went over this already in Genesis chapter 3. When we rebelled against God, that's where things got messed up.
I mean, I didn't rebel against God.
Oh, yes, you have.
Okay, so what's your...
So have I, by the way. I've rebelled against God also.
Sure, so all those little toddlers who get leukemia, because they do, and that's very sad. They deserved it?
No, they didn't deserve it, but they are born into an unfair world, a messed up world.
Yes, but that is an evil explicitly created by God.
No,
That
it is
no-
not.
That is not
It is
out
a
of
free
anywhere else.
decision to rebel against God. And
Wait, so
when
the
people make that
toddler
free
made the
decision,
to rebel against God, which is why he got leukemia.
no, false. The guy gets leukemia because he's born into an unfair, broken, messed up world. That's the world I was born into. That's the world all of you were born into.
So wait, remind me, the world is messed up and broken, which is why the kid gets leukemia. What made the world messed up and broken again?
Human beings rebelled against God.
But human
Like
beings
Eden,
weren't-
or are we talking like in general, us right now?
We're talking about our forefathers and foremothers, and me and you. We've all rebelled against God,
Okay,
and that
but
leads
you
to
believe in
destructiveness.
determinism.
No, I don't
No, but
believe.
this is-
You have to believe in determinism.
I do.
Good, bravo, well done.
Thanks. Yeah.
Good.
I believe in that
Smack.
viewpoint.
Smack. Did you hit her, Cliff? Because I had to. It was
Well,
determined
no,
that I hit her.
It's not I had to.
Oh, yes, it is if you believe in
happened.
determinism.
It's not I had to, it happened.
Oh, happened.
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
baloney.
What do you mean baloney?
Determinism means it has been determined that I hit her.
Yes, correct. Well,
Thank you.
Yes,
That's
yes.
right, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, and my point is, if I hit her, turn to you and you ask me, why'd you hit her? And I say, because I had to. It was determined. You know I'm lying through my teeth, I hope.
well,
That's not at all
That's
what
not what
determinism
yeah,
is, to
yeah.
the extent that
Determinism means it has been determined. Determinism means I don't have a choice. It's been determined. Let's be honest with our language, guys.
I'm being honest.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am. I said I believe in determinism. If you hit her, it wasn't. There's nothing of you that makes it your fault. There is no your fault.
Good.
It's just inputs and outputs.
Good.
How you're genetic. I
Yeah.
fully believe in determinism. I'm not lying.
But you can't live it out.
Yes, I can.
If
Every
I
word
smack
that's coming
her,
out of my mouth
are you going to
has
hold
been
that me
criticized.
responsible for smacking her or not?
What do you mean?
Are you going to say,
There
Cliff,
is no
it
you.
was wrong? There's good. I like
I
you.
yes,
Very
I'm
good. There's no
consistent, I know
you.
it's-
And I would insist you are wrong, and it's proven by you how you live your life.
No.
Hey, this woman says I love you, and you say, I understand, you have to love me. You don't live that way, man. And if I smack her, you're not going to say, oh, Cliff, you had to smack her. And if I'm racist, you're not going to say,
Well,
oh,
using
Cliff,
the
I
word-
understand. You have to be racist.
No, the worst mischaracterization. It's inputs and outputs that create racist people. That's the way to characterize.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
So all my white racist friends have input and output,
Yes.
and they just have to do what they're determined to do.
Have to do it. It just comes to.
Oh, come on now.
Inputs and outputs.
Determinism means
is what it
there's
means.
no you. You do what you're programmed to do.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you.
You're
So
doing
be
what you're
consistent.
supposed to do.
And I'm standing here saying, my white racist friends, I got to look them in the face and say, you're wrong, and you better change your behavior.
And maybe that will be an input that changes their behavior. And that input and you saying that comes from things that happen to you. And things that happen to you come from other inputs and outputs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Determinism.
Let me
Well, I don't
add
agree
to
with
that.
you
Well,
because
I
I
know,
don't
we
think
disagree.
exactly.
It's okay.
I don't think that my behavior is determined by my bad potty training from my mom and dad. I
It is.
insist.
It's one of your inputs.
No, it's not.
Yes, it
My behavior is a result of my free choice.
Okay, quick question.
I disagree.
Wait.
Don't interrupt. We're with him, and we'll get to you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, I'm building off of his.
No, forget it. He's talking. Go ahead.
I completely disagree. I think every word that's coming out of my mouth,
Yes.
all this vocabulary, like
Right.
everything I know,
Right.
comes from inputs and outputs. All of my beliefs come from inputs and outputs.
Yeah.
I disagree with you because of inputs and outputs. If I was in your situation and I grew up like you, I had the exact same genetics, I would be standing there like you, and you would be standing here like me.
Okay.
Inputs and outputs.
So yes, determinism possibly is right. But if a dude, all right, come here, you dude with a beard. Let me hear a second. All right. So this guy comes around a corner with a stack of books under his arm. I haul back, smack him as hard as I can. I'm hauled into a court of law. I stand before a judge, and the judge says, hey, Cliff, why on earth did you go up and smack this guy as hard as you can? I say, it's very simple, Your Honor. I grew up with an abusive father. And my abusive father had a little balding, gray hair like this. And whenever he would abuse me, he would take a big book and slam me over the head. And this dude just so reminded me of my abusive father that I had to haul back and hit him.
Yes.
The judge will say, Cliff, I'm really sorry that you had that kind of abusive father.
Yes.
But you are still responsible for hauling back and punching him. The legal system in the United States, I am glad, is based not on determinism. It is based on the free will that we all have, which means we are responsible for what we do.
I don't think that, I think that in general, people who were abused, do you agree, tend to abuse more in the future. Do you disagree with that?
I don't think a
Do a
person who's
similar-
been abused has to be an
They don't-
abuser.
They don't have to because there are other inputs and outputs. But if someone is abused, it seems like in general they tend to abuse more.
Does
Do you disagree
anybody
with
love
that?
you? Well, then if you hope so, it means you value love, right?
Well, yeah, but I would disagree with what love is when you say it.
And I respect your intellectual consistency. I respect it highly. You're living it out. And I think it's scary.
Why?
Why?
Yeah.
Because it means that I am not responsible for what I do. What I do has been determined.
I don't like make it political, but like things that, for example, structural racism, like stuff that has happened in the past leads to things in the future.
Right.
This is where these ideas come from.
Yeah.
Things that happen in the past affect what happens in the future.
Yeah.
Right? And if you all the inputs and outputs of the world that happened in the past, that is why we are where we are today and what is happening the way it is today.
Okay.
That's the idea.
I disagree.
Okay, yeah.
Why? I respect Harriet Tubman. I respect Gandhi. I respect Mother Teresa. Well, why, Cliff? Why do you respect those people? Because obviously they didn't have to do what they did. Instead, they chose to contradict their culture. They chose to contradict their upbringing. And they chose to fight the caste system, to fight slavery at the cost of their lives. That's why I respect them. I don't respect them because they had to do what they did. And I don't excuse a racist because you grew up in a racist environment, and so therefore you have to hate people of different ethnic heritages. Baloney. You don't have to hate anybody. You choose to hate, you choose to love. You choose to forgive, or you choose to stick it to a person who's hurt you. That's my experience of reality, guys. Now, if your experience is different, so be it. But I think you're lying to yourself and you're lying to me. You know very well that you respect Gandhi, Dr. Martin Luther King, Abraham Lincoln. Why? Because they contradicted their culture. They contradicted their environment. They followed their conscience instead of following the status quo. Now, if you don't respect those people for that reason, fine.
You respect the things they
Tell me why you respect them. Well, I don't respect them, Cliff. Well, there would be another disagreement that you and I would have.
I don't think they exist anymore, for example.
All right.
The people who are dead.
All right. I feel like paying you for standing out here and going at it with me. I cannot thank you enough. And I really respect your intellectual consistency. I am sick and tired of talking to atheists who say, oh no, they're moral objective truths. Baloney, you know they're not. I'm not. If there is no God, it's all a pile of chemicals, and we're just living out our chemical reactions. Correct. Except when you go home tonight, you can't treat your roommate that way, and you can't treat the woman you're dating that way unless you want to blow up your relationship fairly fast.
What do you mean? When I go home and I do the things I do, it's because of inputs and outputs. When I treat someone well, it's because I've been taught to treat people well.
No.
Yes.
It's because you make a decision about how to handle those inputs and those outputs.
Well, your chemical structure makes a decision.
The point, I agree with you. There are chemical reactions in the brain. We agree. My point is, there is still a you that makes a decision how you're going to treat your chemical inputs and outputs.
Of the chemical structures. You believe there's something that, but you would agree, we can't point to that thing and we can't.
That's right, it's not material.
But it's nothing. There is
no, it is very real.
Not material. There's to this.
Oh, yes, there is.
No, there.
Your brain, I can physically dissect your head and touch your brain and analyze it. Your thoughts, I don't have any access physically to your thoughts.
Well, wait, yes, you.
No, I don't.
You do.
I cannot take your thoughts and put them in a test tube. I can take your brain and put it in a test tube, but I cannot take your thoughts.
But you can connect things to my brain and see what I'm thinking.
No, I cannot see your motives. I cannot see your motives.
You're changing it now, though. But you what someone is thinking about. You can know if someone, for example, let's say someone connects something to your brain. They can see and puts up a thing, and they're like, "Do you agree with this?" They can tell if your brain agrees with it or not.
I make a decision. Okay. In other words, not the chemicals made a decision.
Make that decision.
Yes.
A lot of different issues.
A lot of
environment, will, free will, love, forgiveness.
Okay.
Some of them are very tangible, like genetics, like my environment, and others of them are intangible, like love, forgiveness, compassion, empathy. That's why I do it. Pardon?
What made you feel those things?
I can change my mind. You can change your mind.
You can change your mind, but you have to will your mind. Where did that will come from?
It came from my soul, from me, from my rational mind, my conscience, my emotions. That comes from God.
Yeah,
That comes
Those
from
are
God.
God-given gifts.
So
But if there is no God, those gifts do not exist. There's no part. My will is part of my soul, an intangible soul that I have because God made me. A body, yes. Chemicals, yes. But also a soul, intangible consciousness.
okay, for the sake of contradiction, let's assume there's a soul, right? This soul willed something, right? It wills you to want to consume alcohol. It wills you to want to go outside. It wills you to study your calculus homework. Some part of you wills it, and then that happens. Some part of your soul, some part of whatever intangible sense,
Thank you.
it has been willed, right?
Thank you.
You do what you will, yeah. And if you want to change that will, part of you needs to will that, right?
Part of you.
Soul, in sense,
All
I'm
right,
not
the
going to
free
get into
will
the
that we
syntactical
have
problem here.
chooses to do that.
Yeah. So if you choose to do that, you chose to do that because of something else, right? Like if I wanted to stop consuming alcohol, I had to want to not consume alcohol.
I chose to think through the consequences of
What
alcoholism.
made you want to will through the consequences?
What made what?
What made you want to look through the consequences of consuming alcohol?
Because I got some buddies who are alcoholics.
Okay. So
I saw how they destroyed themselves through their alcoholism, and I decided I don't want to go down that path. And I got other buddies who crammed too much fat into their bodies and their arteries are clogged. And I decided I'd like to see my grandchildren get married. So I'm not going to put cholesterol into my body.
So what you're saying is that it's something outside of you.
And what I'm saying is I made an observation of reality, and based on my observation of reality, I made some decisions.
How can you say that you have free will if your will originated from something outside of yourself?
Because we've gone over this, and you're not listening.
I
told
you're
you
not.
flat out, your will is a gift from God. I didn't create my will, you don't create your will. We're born with it. We're born with a conscience, we're born with a rational mind, we're born with a will. Those are gifts that God has given every single one of us.
Okay.
Now the question is, how are you going to use those gifts?
It seems like if you're able to sort of like answer all these questions by referring to God or his activities, the atheist might be just as well suited to say, hey, I'm just going to say a God particle or matter and energy is some fundamental part of the universe. It doesn't seem like there's that much difference in the way that the mystery is handled if they were to do something like that. And it doesn't seem like there's much reason. It just doesn't seem like fair to say that the atheist accepts all these mysteries. And I think atheists have actually perfectly good answers for a lot of the questions you just asked.
Okay,
I mean,
so something came from nothing. How does an atheist get around that one?
well, that's the thing. They don't believe that there was nothing.
What does that mean?
So there was always matter and energy.
Yeah, but
It's
science has
certainly-
blown that out of the water. Science has completely blown that out of the water. Einstein himself even started it, and you need a great beginner to have started everything. That has a beginning.
How did time begin to act on existing matter? That's what the question
Yeah,
becomes.
so you need something outside of space and time to create space and time.
There are plenty of atheist physicists who have perfectly good explanations.
Yeah, that's a pretty good cop-out. That is the ultimate cop-out I've heard today so far.
Steve Green, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and they seem to have decent explanations for it.
Bro, you can't come out here and start debating and just start reeling off names and not even explaining what
Well, it
they
seems
truly
like
are
you're just
positing.
saying God explains it. I mean, why? Like I'm saying, Neil deGrasse.
I'm
Tyson-
saying that immaterial things like consciousness, love, beauty, free will, a soul, self, you need an immaterial source. It's fine, don't call it God. Call it the immaterial monkey sitting on your right shoulder. Whatever you want to call it, it has to be an immaterial source versus the atheist who is a physicalist, a naturalist, saying that there has to be matter and energy that created these things. That's why, here, I'll go ahead and, I don't mean to offend you or sound prideful, but I'll go ahead and take maybe one of these great men you're talking about, Richard Dawkins, who said last week, for example, he said, it makes me really uncomfortable when you talk about free will, because free will is an illusion, because I'm an atheist. And so free will is just this natural byproduct from evolution that doesn't really exist. So you scratching your beard right now, you're not doing a free will movement right now. You were determined to do that by your biology and by your chemicals. You see the radical difference? See, what you're positing out here is just totally fallacious. You can't just say, oh, God, and oh God, and oh atheism, and Neil deGrasse Tyson explains it, and you're just saying it's cop out with God. No, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is the immaterial is the explanation in creating the immaterial, but if you're just a naturalist and atheist, then you have to explain the immaterial from your physical material standpoint. And so please be consistent, like Richard Dawkins, the most famous atheist today, who says it's just an illusion. We don't have free will because it's immaterial. And I'm an atheist, and I can't say that free will exists because it's immaterial, because I'm a materialist, because I'm an atheist.
Plenty of atheists who are who are compatibilists who think that free will is consistent with determinism.
And how do you explain that one? I know some of them, but how do you explain that then? Work that out for me.
Well, you could think that, I mean, look, I could give you some Frankfurt cases where people have no choice and yet acted freely. Is that what you want? I mean, like...
How do you work out compatibilism? Help me.
So suppose, you know, a neuroscientist implants a chip in my brain and tells me, and that chip requires that I pull a trigger. And so I feel like murdering my wife for some reason, and I'm actually about to go. The neuroscientist is going to make sure that I pull the trigger because he's got the chip in my brain. I go up to my wife, I pull the trigger. The neuroscientist never has to activate the chip. I could not have done otherwise, but I acted freely. So there you have it. Free action without the ability to have done otherwise.
Good. So that's Sam Harris.
So that's a compatibilist argument.
Good. That's Sam Harris. So you truly believe that? You truly believe that? Or you're just saying, because I heard you say this is just some other atheist. Because I don't know if you truly believe that?
No, well, Harry Frankfurt thought of the case.
What do you? I don't care about Harry at all.
Yeah.
What do you believe?
I do. Yeah, I do think that that free action is compatible with actions being determined.
All right. Yeah. So this is a very dangerous type of thinking. What did Sammy say last year, based off of this type of thinking? Sammy said the Cheshire shootings that happened 40 minutes from my house when two men came out of prison who were supposedly abused in prison and as children. Came out of prison, they followed a woman home in a Mercedes-Benz, and they raped her, tied the girls up, her daughters up, raped them. Then her husband came home, and they hit him in the head with a baseball bat. He was unconscious, ended up surviving. They lit the house on fire, burned to the ground, the house did, and the three women died that way. What did Sammy Harris say? Sam Harris, as a compatibilist, said that, oh yes, they had a level of free will, but they were also determined. It was a mix. And so we should really not hold them that accountable because you could call it a chip or whatever you like. Sam Harris is saying the neurochemicals, but specifically how they were abused early on in life. That's the reason why they did what they did to these poor women, how they raped them and burned the house to the ground. All right, I have a problem with that. As a Christian, do I believe that neurochemicals, things like abuse, come into play when it comes into my free will? Yes, but I always believe at the end of the day, you have a free will. It's not an illusion. It is God-given, who God, the creator of the entire universe, has this free will that not only does he have, but he created. And as free, autonomous agents, we can decide whether to do real evil or real good. But if you do real evil, you will be held accountable for it. I'm going to train my three girls in such a way where there actually are consequences for their good or bad behavior. If I'm a determinist, an atheist, or typical atheist, I'm going to say, well, no, there's no ultimate consequences for my three sweet girls because they're determined by either poor parenting that I've given them or their own neurochemicals. That does not line up in my understanding of reality.
I think I'm a follower of Christ. I think he lived and died in a way that is redemptive for all humanity.
Do you think he rose from the dead?
Yeah, for sure.
You think he's God in human form?
Yeah.
Wow. When did you put your faith in him?
Probably when I was like 6 or 7.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So mom and dad were key?
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Same here. And what do you teach?
I teach
philosophy. Great. That's awesome. You got a great place as a philosophy professor to do that. Do you have the opportunity to influence people for Christ, or are you not allowed to do that, or what?
My job is to teach people how to reason.
Good.
And I don't hide my beliefs from people, but it's not like I'm gonna rub them in their face when my main duty is
Right.
to teach people how to reason well.
You got to do your job.
That's right.
And that's not to be an evangelist. You're a philosophy professor.
Right.
Russell Cowburn, professor of experimental physics at Cambridge University, says, "You can't work in science and not be struck by the amazingness of the universe. A good day in the lab is a cause for worship because you come out of it seeing God's creation just a little bit more clearly than when the day started."
I don't blame atheists for feeling differently about their work in labs. It seems like one could do the same kind of work and with the same kind of passion at the end of the day. Just
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm very sympathetic to atheists. I think atheists actually in many cases have very good reasons for what they believe. And,
Okay, good. So what's the best reason to be an atheist?
Well, I mean, I do find fine-tuning arguments to be kind of compelling, and like the kinds of arguments of, hey, there's all these contingently existing things, there must be some explanation for why all these contingent things continue to exist, and but I'm it's not obvious to me that that thing has to be a person. It's even sometimes kind of strange to me to suppose that at the core of reality,
Yeah.
the most fundamental thing
Yeah.
is a person. That's not always crystal clear and obvious to me. So I sympathize with atheists when I think about things in that way.
Then what is a better option to the thinking that because we experience love, there indeed is a personal creator at the heart of reality? What's a better option than that?
Hey, I mean, that is a tempting option. There is a surprising degree of love and goodness in the world, and sure, that does seem to count in favor of the idea that there's a person at the core that's guiding the show. And also, seems to be an improbable amount of evil, and not just the kind of evil that grows us, but the kind of evil that breaks us, and the kind of evil that has nothing to do with humans, like the kind like having a deer in the wilderness suffer and die horrendously in a wildfire. That doesn't really produce any great souls. It doesn't sort of like make someone better, and yet it's an evil that exists, and it so there is a great variety of evil in the world, and not all of it seems to do the work that a kind of free will theodicy would help us. So the free will theodicy being one where people's freedom is the reason why God allows bad things to happen. It seems
Right.
like plenty of bad things happen that have nothing to do with people's free choices.
Now, when someone says the best argument against God is the existence of evil, my immediate reaction is, what are you getting so honked off over evil for? Because, I mean, if there is no God, there's no evil, there's no good, it just is. And if you want to attach a descriptive word, evil, or a descriptive word, good, that's a bias, that's a prejudice, it's a taste, right? Or wrong? What do you think?
There's a whole discipline of secular ethics and metaethics that's dedicated to sort of trying to explain why there might be things like good and evil, moral goods and moral evils, even if God doesn't exist. And if you think about it, like the classic, what's called the Euthyphro dilemma, seems to, even if you think God is good,
Yeah.
if God decreed murder on Tuesdays, hey, it's like murder Tuesday or torture Tuesdays. No one would think that was the right thing to do just because God decreed it. So, like the goodness of God and there's a dilemma there, right?
No.
God, what's good isn't good just because God decrees it, because otherwise he could decree torture Tuesdays.
No.
I mean,
Why not? Because he's eternal. Because there's no beginning to God. That's why the whole theoretical issue, well, if tomorrow God says murder's good, then that makes murder good? No. Because God is eternal, no beginning, no end. His character is consistent. It's good. And so murder's never good.
Torture on Tuesdays is fine, or torture every seventh day is fine. Would that have been good?
No. So if God switches and says torture's good, he's not good.
So why couldn't he have defined it in a different way so that torture is okay on Tuesdays?
He could have, but then he's not good. Then he's an ogre. And it's possible. Maybe God is an ogre.
Right, so then how would you know that he was not good in the case that he decides that torture every seventh day is okay?
by studying his character, which is consistently good, by studying the fact that he's eternal, no beginning, no end, by studying the fact that he never has pulled that kind of trick off. He's not interested in pulling that trick off. And then when you begin to see God revealed in the person of Jesus Christ, you begin to see a guy who taught an incredibly high ethical standard, and then he consistently lived up to that standard. That's why I respect him so much. That's why I put my faith in him, part of why. Because not only did he talk about a high ethical standard, he lived up to it. That demands my respect. Does that make any sense?
Not really. It seems to dodge the question, because it seems like you're just saying, I ask, how do you know that God, wouldn't, from eternity decree that torture is okay every seventh day? You say, because he's good and you know him to be good.
No, I'm saying it's a totally theoretical question.
Sure.
Totally theoretical.
Sure it is. And we need it to figure out how the concepts of God and goodness relate to each other, right?
If Hitler had never murdered Jews, he murdered a bunch of Jews. So I'm not going to sit around here asking and deliberating too long on, well, if Adolf Hitler would not have slaughtered Jews in Dachau, Auschwitz, and Buchenwald, wouldn't he have been a great guy? The fact is, he slaughtered Jews. Now, how long do you want me to really consider, well, if he hadn't have slaughtered Jews, would he have been a good guy? My dad was a Swiss Boy Scout. My dad was walking through the Alps one day.
He would have been a lot less bad of a person had he not slaughtered Jews. That seems obvious.
Yeah, but the fact is he did slaughter them. So I'm not going to sit here having a theoretical discussion about if Hitler had not slaughtered Jews. Because in reality, he did.
So it seems like for the same reason we can rule out God being good if he had decreed that
if
torture
he
is
had.
okay on,
yeah, well, guess what?
because we have an independent conception of
If
good.
Jesus had murdered people, I would not believe in him. If Jesus would have been a racist, I would not believe in him. But in reality, historically, he was not a racist. Now, how long do you want me to philosophically consider, well, if Jesus would have been a racist, would you follow him? That's an easy answer. No, I wouldn't. Because my conscience convicts me racism is wrong. Yeah, I've got to be more practical. I've got to deal with reality.
Can we go back to a quick point? I'm reading everything on you that is anti-evangelism. Everything I'm reading on you is atheists got a lot of great points, and we agree. Atheists have some good points, but I certainly hope that you don't hate your philosophy students enough to not try and convince them that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. Because Penn and Teller said, hey, look, if I was a Christian, I would certainly hope I would share that there is eternal life out there through Jesus Christ with every single person I possibly could get to. Because if I didn't, I would be saying, I really hate you. So I love your neutrality and the little bit of political correctness oozing out of the pores. But I hope you also understand that there are many religious professors that we're going to counter who are proselytizing way louder than any type of Christian philosophy professor and saying Christianity is a joke. Or they'll take the liberal approach and say, Jesus Christ, he taught something, he was a good moral teacher. But it's the historical Jesus route. It's definitely not Jesus who actually supernaturally resurrected from the dead. So I just plead with you, and I'm wondering, where do you stand on that?
I love psychology and cognitive science, and one thing I know about the cognitive science and psychology of persuasion is that people are actually far more persuaded when when you take their views very seriously, and you admit when you're uncertain about something.
Beautifully put.
I think you can be way more compelling, and so
I agree.
I'm just standing in the fact that, hey, I actually see some very intelligent atheists who have really good reasons for their beliefs, and I don't think I'm losing anything by that. I think the atheists sitting around here, they're going to want to talk to me more because I take them seriously. I think the things that they believe are valuable. As to why I wouldn't try to convince every student to become a Christian, I mean, I think, suppose I'm a chiropractor and or better yet, a physical therapist who's done 9 years of my life trying to work on people's bodies and make their biomechanics better, and that's my main goal in life. Should I just walk up to somebody and just adjust them? I think it's gonna work out way better if they're coming to me.
If you have the cure for cancer, though, I certainly hope you'd go to them and share that cure rather than, you come to me eventually, and if you ask the right questions, no, hopefully you will go to that person and share with them that there's such a thing as radiation and chemo.
Sure, but what does that translate to?
It's real simple what it translates to. If you're OBGYN, if you're a breast cancer doctor, and you're sitting across a dinner table from a woman who's highly uneducated, doesn't have the faintest idea of the importance of having a mammogram, you begin to realize there are some signs that this woman might have breast cancer. And if you just sit there and don't say anything, how can you argue that you really care about the woman that you really love? It doesn't mean you're going to jam anything down her throat. It doesn't mean you're going to grab her and force her to have a mammogram. But it means you're going to try and articulately, intelligently, humbly, not I guarantee that you have breast cancer, or I guarantee that if you do have breast cancer, a mammogram is going to help fix it all. We don't know that, obviously. So you're right, there's uncertainty. But we also have a degree of certainty that you should have a mammogram, and you quite possibly have breast cancer, and we can help you, especially if we catch it at an early stage. And I hope that you'll do that. Isn't that not the compassionate thing to do?
For sure. If I'm a doctor, that person's in my office because they came to me with a problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I've advertised myself as a person who has solutions to certain kinds of problems. You know, like, I'm not against saying, hey, letting my students know that I'm a Christian.
Good.
But like, I'm not in class going to tell them all the reasons why they should believe in that Jesus is the Messiah.
That's not what you're hired to do.
So I just think if they're interested and they have a problem and they're coming to me, then fair game.
You bet.
But, you know, like, I'm not going to...
All right, there's a tremendous amount of mystery, okay? I can't explain the Trinity. I can't explain how sovereignty of God and free will come together. Tremendous amount of unanswered questions, and I better be honest. And if I come off like I got all the answers to all the difficult questions, I'm an arrogant twit. But I've got to be honest. Jesus Christ has changed my life. I've got to be honest. As I think through these issues, the evidence is Jesus Christ is reliable. Now, I had the privilege of meeting Dr. Armin Nicolai. He taught the favorite course when he was there at Harvard University. He taught at Harvard Med School. He was a psychiatrist. The course he taught at Harvard was a comparison between Sigmund Freud and C.S. Lewis. He was brilliant, he was humble, and the Harvard students loved him. He probably taught the most popular course when he was there at Harvard. He was devoted to Christ. No, he wasn't like me. He didn't go out here and speak this way. But he was brilliant. He had a deep faith in Christ. Check out his course. I mean, it was an amazing course on Sigmund Freud and C.S. Lewis. And he never said, oh, it's a no-brainer, you're dumb if you don't believe. But he kept on pointing people to the thoughtfulness, the evidence that God exists, that Christ is the truth. He kept on pointing people to the logical ramifications of Sigmund Freud's atheism and to the theism and Christian faith of C.S. Lewis. You could do the same thing, couldn't you?
And my point was not on how you share your faith. People share their faith differently out here. You know, when St. Francis of Assisi talked about preach the word, use words when necessary, because it's all about how you act out your life.
Yeah.
Well, okay, great, beautiful. What I was saying more so to you is, don't you understand, if you believe that Jesus is the Son of God, that he actually rose from the grave, and that he's making exclusive truth claims on how to get to heaven, I hope you realize and understand that people's eternal destiny is on the line. So when you're in teaching your philosophy class, let's not be so open-minded that our brains fall out. Let's instead say, no, we're going to have to bite down on something. We can't just be pure agnostics and say, oh, that's great, you're a free thinker, and I'm a free thinker, and we'll sing Kumbaya together because we're all free thinkers. Instead, it's a matter of, no, you're going to have to bite down on something eventually. Now, is there truth, and what is that truth becomes the question.
Concerning when you end up diving down into Scripture and realizing that, like, there are these passages that say, just as through all men, just as through Adam all men died, so through Jesus all men will be made alive. There's no qualifier there. It's pretty clear from that and many other passages, all will be saved. And I think, like, philosophical side of this, the moral side of this, I would have to believe God to be a moral monster if I thought he was going to condemn anybody to hell eternally for any finite amount of wrongdoing. And so I think, it would be, I mean, I think there is a hell, but I think it's more like a place of quarantine, a place where people go temporarily, and maybe we could save people a lot of suffering by sort of guiding them to the light. But
so you don't believe there's a hell, right?
You can't make them drink.
There's no hell, is there?
There is, yeah.
Why is there a hell? Doesn't that make God a moral monster, as you said?
Well, I just don't think people are there for eternity. I think it's more like purgatory.
Okay, why do you think that?
Well, because I think it's impossible for a good God to condemn anybody to eternal suffering for any reason at all, really. I just don't think that I don't think like that makes any sense.
Okay, what about annihilationism? That God annihilates those who choose to live their life separate from him? Does that make more sense to you?
Sure, it makes more sense, but I just find universalist passages in Scripture to be very compelling.
But you read in context, obviously.
Yes, it says, all men through Adam have died, so all men through Jesus will be made alive. That doesn't seem consistent with annihilationism to me.
Okay, so we all literally died because of Adam and Eve.
All will be raised, will not be fallen, or that fallenness will be reversed.
Not all humankind, all who put their faith in Christ. Paul makes that abundantly clear throughout Romans,
There's no
1st and 2nd Corinthians.
Do you know Paul never mentions hell in any of his letters? Did you know that?
He talks about judgment very clearly.
Well, he talks about judgment.
Yeah.
You could have judgment without an eternal hell.
He talks about the destruction that God will bring about after judgment very clearly. He talks about eternal life. He talks about eternal death. He talks about judgment. He talks about the destruction of wickedness and people who sin against God. I mean, come on. He makes it abundantly clear.
I don't know.
You don't know? Hades, Tartarus, Sheol. Come on. Hades, Tartarus. It's pretty clear. It's hell.
Well, I mean, so Hades borrowing from Greek, like the words that Jesus uses when he talks about, like when he's thought to be talking about hell, actually refer to a very, like a physical place,
Right.
Megiddo.
It was prepared for the devil and his angels,
Right.
not physical.
Yeah. If you actually look with just unbiased eyes, try to figure out what would like a 1st or 2nd century Christian have taken from this, I'm not sure that you should conclude that they believed that there was a hell or that hell was eternal.
What should you
In
conclude?
fact, some church historians think that most Christians in the 3rd century were actually universalists of exactly this kind.
Come on, sir.
And there are church fathers like
Some people think I'm a bad dream you're having.
Gregory of Nyssa was a universalist.
Some people think. What do you think and why do you think it? What do you think? Why do you think it?
I told
do
you
you
what I
think
think.
there's going to
I
be a
told you
hell?
what I think.
No. You keep on saying, there's a good book out here. There's another view out there. What do you think and why?
I mean, I'm not a New Testament scholar, so I this is not my area of expertise. But anyway,
So what?
I mean,
I'm
think
not a scholar
I think
either.
that all shall be saved, and I think it on the basis of universalist passages like the one in Romans that I quoted.
Why in the first 300 years were all these Christians giving up property, reputation, and their very lives if they were universalists? All are going to be saved anyway. Were they just idiots? Masochists?
No,
Everybody's going to get saved? So why were they doing that then?
they believed that they were following in their master's footsteps.
Then why why Larry Hurtado out of Marquette University said historically Christians were going into homes that they were being invited into, and you were supposed to go into a home in the Roman Empire and worship the gods of that home. It was called being respectful to the homeowner. They were going in and saying, sorry, I cannot do that. There is one way to God, not endless amounts of way where all people are going to be saved. So basically, you're just rejecting all of what was done in the first 300 years after Jesus' resurrection. I mean, when we were standing in the Roman Colosseum thinking about how 360,000 Christians went to their death in the most brutal kind of way imaginable within a period of 100 years, I mean, isn't that cheapening their lives to the worst degree imaginable? Just saying, well, they would have been saved anyway. They just all got it wrong.
Said that there is a hell. It's going to be a place of a lot of suffering because, because of the people who are going to be there. Not because God hates them, but because, I think kind of people that are going to be there are people who have rejected God.
But if you look at those texts that you're pointing to, that in Adam we all die and in Christ we all will live, he's not talking about universalism. He's not saying that everyone's going to go to heaven. That is a total twisting of what Paul is saying. It's not fair to the text. If you try and argue that Paul and Jesus weren't warning that there's eternal destruction out there for those who do evil and walk away from God, come on.
Can't say there's 100 papers in my office and all of them were F's and you say, well, I mean, there's no what I've said is that they're all F's. I can't say no, some of them are A's. So Paul doesn't restrict the quantifier at all.
Yes, he does restrict it.
as-
And I understand. I don't want anybody to go to hell. I want nobody to go to hell. That's why I'm standing out here. So emotionally we connect. We understand each other, okay? The thought of hell disturbs me deeply. I don't want anybody to go to hell. Neither do you. But guess what? I've never been to heaven. I've never been to hell. I can't give you an eyewitness account. I trust Jesus Christ, the Bible, to reveal that there is a heaven, that there is a hell. You take Christ and the Bible out of the picture, I'm up a creek without a paddle when it comes to explaining why I think there's life after death, why I think there's a hell. It's an issue of, has God revealed this? And that's what Christ claimed, and that's what Paul claimed.
It's hard for me to imagine, or in fact, it's impossible for me to imagine a good God condemning people to hell, to an eternity of suffering.
Yeah, and I'm standing here saying God is good, and people will spend eternity separate from him. That'll be hell.
What about that?
So what does that make me?
What
It makes me either stupid or emotionally stunted.
I mean, you could make that inference. I'm not encouraging you to make it.
Well, what are you saying then?
I'm saying we disagree about what goodness is, and that, like, it's not clear to me that, I mean, I think we do have a very fundamentally different notion of goodness if you think goodness, a good God, is consistent with eternal suffering, like causing people to suffer eternally.
I still think you're emotionally biased, as he said, and I understand, because I'm emotionally biased also. I'm not saying you're weird. I'm emotionally biased. And so then the question for me, because I don't like hell, I've talked to you about it. I don't like the thought of her, him, or whoever going to hell. All right? I don't like that. I hate that. And that's why I'm mesmerized by the cross of Christ, where he claims to bleed and die to pay the hell that I deserve. And I'm saying, whoa, that's incredible. Putting your faith in him is he's barricading our path to hell. Gosh, don't look a gift horse in the face and say get lost, right?
For sure.
All right, well, thank you so much for talking with us. Greatly appreciate it.